Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Between Sessions with Berries. We have a very important guest today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. We're going to step outside the therapy room just a little bit to talk about a topic that impacts all of us, but is often surrounded by anxiety and avoidance. Even as therapists, avoid this completely. And that's planning for the future. Our guest, David Rosati, is a lawyer with over a decade of experience in estate planning. He's the co-founder of Succession Wills, a platform designed to make this difficult process easier and more accessible. David is passionate about the human side of the work, and he's here to talk about why estate planning is an act of care, how to overcome the emotional barriers to getting it done, and how technology can help us face these important life decisions with more peace of mind. Dave, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. I have so many questions, right? As I said in the intro, therapists, we are really good at telling other people to do this stuff, but we suck at it.
Lawyers are much better, trust me.
Really, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's like, gosh, maybe I should do a will for myself. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so therapists are really bad about that. So with all this experience you have, what is it that you notice from people? Like, why do people put this off for years and years and years of their life? Like, maybe we could just start there.
Well, I certainly have my theories. How accurate they are is anyone's guess. So I do a few different areas of law in my practice. Estate planning and wills is one of many. And I got to say, compared to basically every other area of law, wills take the longest, right? Like I will have a client open up a will file with me. They have all the motivation in the world. It's almost a rush for them. You know, they got to get it done. They got to get it done.
Yeah.
And then they go dark for 6 months or whatever, right? And this is somebody who has paid a retainer to a lawyer, and they got me chasing them, sending them an email once a month saying, "Hey, how's it going?" Obviously, I try to be as respectful and gentle as possible in those follow-ups. We're all busy and we all want to live forever. So what seemed like a rush at first ceases to be, but there's certainly a lot of procrastination involved. My theory is that it's twofold. The first, maybe most obvious, is it's thinking about your mortality, right? And as I said, we all want to live forever. We tend not to want to go there, whether with our own mortality, that of our parents, those we love. So I think that's a natural human instinct of self-preservation and not wanting to get into that kind of heavy stuff. And then I think the other element is just that, at least in some cases, doing your estate planning, doing your will involves some tough decisions, right? Like emotionally difficult decisions. When I do a legal file with an employment law case, you know, maybe I'm acting for the employer and they need to terminate someone. Like that's an emotionally difficult decision. That's about as rough as it gets.
Yeah.
But in some ways it pales in comparison to deciding who's going to receive all of your worldly possessions, or who's going to take care of your children after you're gone. Like these are really tough questions, and it's understandable that people put it off.
Absolutely. And you specialize in like businesses like mental health or people that are in that field, right? Is that right? Like that have practices or businesses that they're also trying to figure out what to do?
Correct. Yeah. Like most of my background as a lawyer is basically all things business law, mostly with
Okay.
medium and small businesses. So definitely a lot of professionals with professional practices is part of it. Some larger companies too, but the point being that I tend to be their go-to business lawyer, meaning I have to be a jack of all trades. One day I'm negotiating some sort of contract with a vendor. The next day I'm doing an employment matter. The next day they're, bringing in a partner and they need a new partnership agreement or something. Like it's all over the place. And that's actually what led me to estate planning. So unlike there are lawyers certainly who truly focus on and specialize in wills and estates. That's what they do day in, day out. I sort of fell into it because a lot of these business owners that side of things, the estate planning, is just another element of being a prudent business owner, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
what's your succession plan?
Yeah.
If you ever sell your business or your practice and you receive that big payday one day that we all hope to get,
Yeah.
now you got to think about, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to create some sort of trust to invest for the next generation, or how do you ensure to pass along what you've built to the next generation in a tax effective manner is usually the main thing. So there's so much intersection
Mm.
between the business law that I've focused on and the estate planning work. And what led me to what I'm doing now is, in a lot of those cases, the wills and estates that we're doing are for individuals who have somewhat complicated needs, right? They maybe have multiple businesses and companies, they have lots of assets, maybe they own multiple properties, etc., and they need more sophisticated estate planning. And that's sort of where I got all my experience, is doing these sort of high net worth, more complicated wills and estates files. And then what would happen is I would get, a friend or family member or somebody who say, "Hey, Dave, can you do my will?"
Mm.
And theirs is like, "Hey, I leave everything to my wife or husband, and then it all goes to the kids equally." And it's all the same. And that is like 95% of people.
Yeah. That's interesting. I always wondered, like, how complicated are most people's wills?
Most people's aren't, right? And so I would say, like, in this case, they're friends and family. I'm doing it at a discount, if not free. But for a lot of these people, it occurred to me like it's really overkill for like 95% of people
Mm.
to go to a lawyer, go through all that process, pay the anywhere from $1, 2, $3,000, depending on what market you're in, just for something that is, going to be relatively rinse and repeat on the lawyer side. And
Yeah.
that's what led me to build Succession Wills, which is meant for that 95% majority. It's not meant for that, 5% who
Yeah.
have the complicated estate planning needs. This is not replacing lawyers for those people by any means, but
Mm.
if it can provide a means to give access to a proper will for that vast majority of people who maybe, you know, can't or don't want to spend the money on going to a lawyer, then that would be great.
That's very cool. Yeah, I want to dive into that too, just like creating that and then how people find you and use that service. But I'm curious about like the psychological side of it that we were talking a little bit about. How do you help people get past that? If somebody comes to you and says, even your friends, right? Like, I mean, I need a will probably, I mean, I don't think about it because I don't have like kids or anything. So I don't know. I guess when I die, I don't know what'll happen to it. Like, I really don't think about it. But
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you help people get through that part? Like, I don't want to even talk about my mortality or make any big decisions.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't want to go through like some lengthy process. So, how do you help go through that whole process with people?
Before I jump into it, I'll address what you just mentioned about how you haven't thought about it because you don't have kids. And
Yeah.
the interesting thing is that it's actually in that situation that you almost need the will more, because
Oh,
when you're married, you have kids, etc., there are what are called the intestacy rules, which basically means like what happens to your stuff if you don't have a will and you die.
okay.
And those intestacy rules, these sort of default rules, contemplate that if you have kids or a spouse, it's all going to go to them equally, et cetera. So those people are actually at less of a risk of the wrong person or the government taking all of their worldly possessions or what have you. It's actually those who don't fall into that bucket that you almost need it even more. If there's a
Oh,
particular
God.
charity or a niece or nephew that you're particularly close with or something like that. So setting that aside, I don't want to
You're right, though. I mean, I'm cutting you off totally, but like if I died tomorrow, because I think about this sometimes, I'm like, if I died tomorrow, nobody would even know how to log into half of my stuff,
well, yeah,
you know?
that's a totally separate issue. That's
Okay, totally
is
separate
something
issue.
I'd love to talk about. It factors into some of our future plans for the
Oh,
company for succession wills, but the whole, what are my passwords, what are my account numbers, all of that is a whole other can of worms. that even if
Oh
you
my
have a
gosh.
will and it's a perfectly drafted will, it says who gets everything, etc., that doesn't
I
mean that they can
couldn't
get
imagine.
access to the bank account, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
totally getting off track here, but we just moved my dad into assisted living and got like power of attorney. It was a nightmare, like trying to find all the passwords and get, all the doctors' names and phone numbers and addresses and, releases signed. Like it is a
Yeah.
process. Oh my gosh.
It is. It is. And it's getting harder too because the more digital, the more online we all get, there's more of that to sort out. And then on top of it, banks and other institutions are getting more and more protective, which they have to do, like with fraud and everything
Yeah.
getting worse and worse. They keep having to adopt more stringent procedures and rules around this stuff to protect themselves and to protect their clients, which is understandable. But when you're trying to deal with an aging parent or death in the family, it can make it really difficult.
Oh my gosh, it really does. So back to what I guess my original question was about, like somebody like me, right? You're saying that's even more important. Like, what actually does happen if someone's not married and don't have kids? Like, where do all their assets go? I mean, if they don't have like assigned beneficiaries or something.
Yeah, so
I never even thought of that.
it's called I'm going to try to pronounce it. It's like an old Latin word or something. It's called the table of consanguinity or something like that. I'm
Oh,
butchering it,
okay.
I'm sure. Google it.
Hmm.
It's going to be different for different states, but it's basically like a flow chart almost of who gets what in that
Ah,
situation. Generally, it's like a next of kin thing, though, for the most part.
interesting.
So if you have like, nieces or nephews, likely it would go to them.
Ah, well, that's good to know. Okay, so I don't need a
Yeah.
will. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, so back to that process. So somebody
Yeah.
like me, somebody that's got kids, it's pretty obvious. Somebody like me probably does need something like that. So you get somebody like me that comes in the door, and I'm like, I don't actually want to talk about any of this. How do you help people move through that process?
There's no right or wrong here, right? I'm sure we all have our own style. My approach, honestly, is I use a lot of personal anecdotes. I use myself, I sort of wear my own situation or my own heart on my sleeve with them. And I find that that really helps break down barriers when they could see, they're not alone. Me being their advisor in that situation, I understand the difficulty of some of the decisions. It helps open people up and get them thinking when they get a real world example. And especially when it's the lawyer who is asking them these sort of sensitive questions is reciprocally opening up to them. I find that helps a lot. And the other tactic I use is just sort of compartmentalizing. Sometimes it's just that it's just like daunting, right? It's a lot
Yeah.
of stuff to think about all at once. And so I will say, okay, well, let's focus on this question right now. And
Hmm.
when we get this one sorted, we move on to the next one. And that ties into something else, which is the perceived sort of finality of doing one's will. Again, this is one of my theories. I don't necessarily have any evidence for it, but I suspect that for a lot of people, doing their will feels like such a consequential act with a lot of finality to it, right?
Yeah.
Whoever I name in this thing is going to get everything, and I better get this decision right. And what I say sometimes is, perfect can be the enemy of good here. Better you have a will in place that maybe omits to deal with a certain issue or chooses someone for now that maybe you might change your mind later. That's still better than no will at all. This
Hmm.
very commonly comes up with like custody of children, right? Who's going to get, if something happens to me and my wife, who's going to take care? I have two little girls, right? Who's going to take care of our daughters? And that's one of the hardest questions people come across for obvious reasons. And it's also something that changes over time, right? When you're younger, the obvious answer is your parents. But
Yeah.
when your kids are a little older and your parents are older, maybe that doesn't make sense anymore. Maybe you're looking at siblings now or something, or close friends. So what I do is I try to break down the perceived finality of that decision because we can write in the will right now that mom and dad or grandma and grandpa are going to get the kids if something happens to us. And if, heaven forbid, grandpa comes down with, a heart condition and he can't have little kids running around, we can come back and change the will later, right? A will is not a final document. It can be amended, it can be replaced. I think when people understand that not only can it be updated and replaced, but people should proactively be doing so. Every few years, you should revisit what's in your will and make sure it still makes sense given the ever changing life circumstances. So, those are sort of my three tactics. And when it comes to what we built at Succession Wills, I've attempted to digitally work each of those things into how the platform works as well.
Oh, nice. So it's like, first of all, I love that. I mean, it just makes so much sense. Like, let's just get a basic thing down. You don't have to make huge decisions, but anything's better than nothing. And then, when you feel ready for maybe like, oh, what about that property in Vermont or whatever, then we'll talk about it. We'll get a little more like specific as time goes on, the more comfortable you feel. Because that's super daunting, right? To think about, oh my God, I've got to like analyze every asset I have and make decisions about it for, I mean, that's a big deal. Yeah, so I could see how people
Yeah.
would just avoid it completely, myself included.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. So then succession wills, can we talk about that a little bit? It's important to talk about, I think, all these little details and then how to work through the process with something like succession wills and how maybe even you built it a little bit. That'd be cool to hear. Like, how did you come up with the idea and get this out there? Because, I mean, you're solving a problem, right? You're going from like the one-to-one to the one-to-many model. And that's what we talk about a lot on here too. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that and then what it is and how listeners can use it and find it and do all that.
Sure. And please do stop me if I drone on because
That's okay.
I love talking about this stuff. And you've probably caught my accent that I'm Canadian. So if I'm saying a boot a little bit, that's why. So why I started it, it's probably a little bit more selfish than it might seem at this point, but it was really just like a fun passion project for me. I've always been very interested in technology, and in another life, I might have gone directly into tech. Now, when I was, and I'm dating myself here, but when I was going into college, at that time, tech was not how you made money, right? You went and you become a doctor, a lawyer, or something like that. So even though I had this passion coming out of high school for technology, a little bit of coding I was doing, and things like that, I sort of pushed it down and thought, I'm going to go become a businessman or become a lawyer. And that's what I did. But flash forward however many years it took me to get through law school and all that. And I was starting at my firm and sort of couldn't help but notice the way certain things were done seemed a little antiquated in terms of just doing things manually, doing things the old fashioned way. And I started tinkering really early on with, and this is long before AI or proper automation tools were publicly available, but I started just sort of coding my own little ways to automate certain elements of document preparation and things like that. And mostly that was focused on the various types of corporate and business law things I was doing. But it became apparent pretty quickly that doing this with wills would be very powerful. So, needless to say, I started tinkering with that and ended up, it was at a work party actually, and the husband of one of my colleagues who I went to law school with and am friends with, I was chatting with her husband at this work function, and he's a developer, a software developer, and was freelancing and was sort of had just finished a big project and was looking for his next one and wanted to do something in the legal space. And the rest is history, as they say.
Oh, wow.
So he's my
Cool.
partner, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, we've been working together for some time now.
I love that. I love stories like that. Yeah, very cool. And how long ago did you start Succession Wills? Has it been a while?
Well, we started building it about 2 years ago.
Okay.
We actually
Nice.
only like went live this January, so we've only been like live doing this for a very short amount of time.
That is awesome.
And that was partially because, and my partner Nick was ready to kill me over this, but like I had to have everything perfect, right? Like, and I guess in tech, like in software, that's not normally how it works. Normally you go live with sort of what they call an MVP, and a minimum viable product, and you sort of build the parachute as you're falling.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, we can't do that. Like, this is people's livelihoods. This is serious stuff. It has to work. It has to be correct.
Hmm.
And not just that, but I wanted it to be very powerful. So, going into business like this, one of the first things I did obviously was check out the competition. And I found that a lot of the other companies doing this sort of online build your own will type of thing, they have very nice flashy websites. The user interface right through going through the process is very, very good. But then the actual will that it would spit out at the end, I
Mm.
would find would be quite basic. And, the beauty of that for them is that most ordinary customers don't they're not lawyers. They don't know what they're
They think
reading
it's a great
necessarily.
will.
They think it
Yeah.
looks great, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't want that. I wanted something that was truly customized and powerful, not just a sort of static form in which the software was filling in some blanks. No, like I want entire sections and paragraphs to dynamically change based
Mm.
on how the user is answering these questions and how they're instructing us. And so it took a while to build. And it was just
Nice.
the two of us, right? Sort of doing this as a passion project. I still have my law practice, my very, very full time law practice. And so we took our time. We did it. We did it totally bootstrapped, right? We didn't go raising capital and bringing on other stakeholders that might affect our creative autonomy. And yeah, here we are. We just launched in January and we're getting lots of good feedback. And sort of, next step is to get the word out.
Really cool. So I mean, it sounds like it's a good fit maybe for a therapist that's listening and or like me, that's like, maybe I need a will that you could just kind of pop in there. And I guess my first question, I don't know if you get this question, like, can anybody from any state do it? Or are you guys like state specific because of where your law degree is? Or does that matter with this?
So I'm, again, I'm Canadian by background.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm a lawyer. I'm a Canadian lawyer.
Okay. Oh, okay.
My practice is in a mid-sized city outside of Toronto, and I moved to the U.S. going on 3 years ago. I live in
Hmm.
Florida now,
Okay.
um, and so I very quickly teamed up with a lawyer here as well. So presently, it's fully set up for various Canadian provinces, and it's
Hmm.
fully set up for Florida. And the contents of the will, again, dynamically change based on which jurisdiction you say you're in.
Oh, okay.
Now, so far for the U.S., it's Florida specifically,
Okay.
and basically now that we're live, we're going through a process of onboarding lawyers in different states to sort of do the any individual tweaks that may be necessary. But generally speaking, these things are very uniform across states. Like there are state specific nuances here and there, but it's more around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to necessarily mean that the core of your wishes are not going to be honored, right? It's more like,
Yeah.
oh, did you file this with the proper county clerk or not?
Mm-hmm.
Which is
Mm-hmm.
a matter of bolstering the not the enforceability, but reducing the chances of somebody being able to come out of the woodwork and claim that the will was not valid if you've filed it with the local county. But it doesn't mean that the underlying will isn't necessarily valid. It's more of just an extra crossing of T's or dotting of I's.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. Really cool. So, for a therapist listening and they're like, I've got to get a will, do you have just general advice? Like, what are the first steps? What should you do if, like, you're like in Colorado or something and you need a will and you're like, I'm listening to this. This is like my sign. What should, what should a therapist do? Like, what would you recommend? Somebody that maybe isn't in Florida right now or in Canada,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's two approaches. I mean, I'll plug my own thing of, go to successionwills.com and get it here and then go take it to a lawyer.
I love that.
That's one option, right? Is you
Smart.
do it through this process. And
Okay.
the thing is even if a lawyer completely rewrites it
Mm.
for based on the forms that they like to use or what have you, it can actually still, and I'm not saying that that would happen. I'm confident that wouldn't happen. But
Sure, sure.
if you were to take it to a lawyer in Colorado and they say, you know what, I don't want to use this, I'm going to use my own form, it still actually helps. And I get this all the time now with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Now, don't do your will on ChatGPT.
Oh, really?
I'm
Okay,
warning
no, just
everyone.
kidding.
Do not do that. But what's
Okay.
happening in the legal space is, ChatGPT and AI is starting to disrupt the legal profession a little
Mm,
bit
yeah.
in terms of, and not when it comes to the big transactions, the big deals, the really important stuff. They know you got to go to a lawyer for that. But
Hmm.
sometimes when it comes to the smaller stuff, like a lot of small businesses now, whereas they might have gone to a lawyer before to prepare a vendor contract or an employment contract or what have you, they'll now go on a ChatGPT and get ChatGPT to write it for them and try to save some money,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yes,
becoming
yes.
very common. Not a week goes by now where I don't get a client throwing a ChatGPT contract at me. And what I
Oh, wow.
say, and in an effort to be forward thinking and not protective, I don't want to be the horseshoe blacksmith who sees the automobile driving by and starts shaking his fist at it. The way of the future is the way of the future. So I try to embrace it. And what I tell people is, you know what? Even if I don't use this form of employment contract you wrote with ChatGPT, this still streamlines my job a lot because now I know exactly what you want the contract to say. Like I
Mm,
have it now in bullet points for me so that I can jump straight into my own drafting exercise a lot easier. I don't need to as much back and forth with the client trying to gather up their instructions anymore.
mm-hmm.
And it can work the same way with a will. So if you were to again, use Succession to prepare your will and you take it to the lawyer in Colorado and he or she says, I'm going to toss this and use my own, it nevertheless is still going to streamline that drafting process for that lawyer because they have a document that already says everything you want your will to contain
Mm-hmm.
and they can just
Yeah.
jump right in.
So smart. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And, I talk about that too a lot. Like, well, because we need templates for our practices and stuff. Like, we'll try to, I mean, maybe you could use ChatGPT to get a basis, but take it to a lawyer, please, and have somebody look this over. So I'm glad that you've got templates that are already basically lawyer written that are customized. They can use those and then take them to a lawyer in a different state if they have to. They decide they want to. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So, where do people find Succession Wills? Where do you go? What's the website?
The website is successionwills.com.
Nice.
And we're also on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at
Okay.
Succession Wills. Yeah, again, we've just launched and we're totally bootstrapped, so we're still building when it comes to our social media.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun, and the site itself is very intuitive, very easy to use, and we've factored AI into it as well. So that's a feature we're particularly proud of that the competition does not have, which is
Mm-hmm.
that, and this goes to what we were talking about earlier in terms of ways in which I help bring people along through this difficult process is a lot of or traditionally any online will builder, it's essentially a series of questions and forms to fill out, right? Like you're
Mm-hmm.
answering what are my kids' names, who do I want to leave custody to, etc. For some people, that's fine if they're sufficiently comfortable with the concepts involved and they want to do it that way. That will work. But for a lot of people, these are really new concepts. Some of the legal language, as much as we try to make it as colloquial and user friendly as possible, some of the language and concepts can still be a little daunting for people.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've done is we've integrated what we call the AI legal assistant into it. So at any time
Mm.
while you're going through the process with us, there's a toggle that you could toggle from the standard questionnaire type of approach to
Mm-hmm.
a conversational AI.
Okay.
And what that'll do is the AI will ask you the right questions and basically solicit out of you all of the necessary information it needs to prepare the will. The AI is not drafting the will. This is not ChatGPT drafting anyone's will.
Yeah.
Rather, what the AI is doing is just gathering those inputs from the user to basically fill out the questionnaire for them. But at the end of the day, that information, those inputs are still going into the same very heavily structured system for generating the will.
Nice. Very cool. That's awesome. And part of this podcast is Between Sessions with Barry's. And as you know, probably Barry's is an AI scribe. So we'd love to talk about technology and how you're incorporating it into everything that you're doing. So that's really cool to hear that y'all put that in there. Nice. Okay, so I am in Florida, so I might have to hit that website and use it so I can get a well. Now, does it ask questions? This is purely me asking. Does it ask questions about your business entities and all that stuff and like assets, or is it more basic? Okay.
So you can do what we would call in the trade a specific bequest, right? So if you want, for instance, the business or the, whether it's your LLC interests or what have you, to go to a specific person, you can certainly do that. Generally, what a lot of people do is they just have like what we call a residue bequest, which means they just say, I want all my stuff to go to my two kids equally. And then it becomes the job of the executors, or what in Florida we call personal representatives, to basically figure out how to divvy up the estate, what to sell off and liquidate, what to keep, and how to divvy it up. And it becomes it becomes within their discretion to do it, rather than having a specific inventory of every single asset and saying, I want this to go to this person. I know that's how it always works in the movies, but in real life, most people don't do that. And the obvious reason, aside from the time input to do that inventory, like those things change over time, right? And your will can become obsolete very quickly. That said, when it comes to business interests, in particular your practice or company you own or something, it's much more common to do that. Mm-hmm. With succession, you can do a specific bequest like that for your business. Now, as far as going a step further and getting into the real nitty gritty of business succession planning, right? Like, who's going to actually take over the practice, who has the proper licensing, what happens with, insurance, and there's so many different elements of actually doing succession planning for a business that are outside of simply the personal will of the owner, which, admittedly succession wills doesn't do. And this comes back to what I said earlier about the 95 versus the 5%, right? Succession is meant for that vast majority of the population that have a relatively straightforward set of circumstances to deal with. And when it comes to corporate succession planning, I would recommend probably going to a lawyer.
Gotcha. Yeah. Good advice. Gotcha.
I got a guy here in Florida I can recommend.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's really an interesting topic. And, I hope the therapist listening, if anything, it'll light a fire under them to just take care of it and get it knocked off your list. And then the ability to be able to update it pretty easily is very cool, I think. Like, we found my dad's will. I mean, this thing was like 30 years old. We were like, who's your executor? Like, we don't even know who this person is. It was kind of crazy. But, so I like that you can update it over time.
Yeah. And with us, it's again coming back to the digital versions of those things I said help prod people along. It's lifetime access. So like you're paying. I like to say you're not paying to buy a will, a document. You're buying access to this platform that you can come back and you can change it and re-download it anytime, and you're not getting charged every time you do that.
Oh, that's nice. Lifetime access. I love that. I always opt into the lifetime access. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time today to be here.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.